Hey guys, thanks for coming. As every human should do, I'm going to show a little bit of thanks first, and that's to you guys for spending some of your valuable time, and thanks to everybody that put this on. I think it's amazing, and part of what I'll talk about today is community. That'll actually be the main part of it as it relates to investing. So I think it's fantastic that you guys already have a strong community built here. My name's Kyle Reutner. I'm the general manager of Kohana Rum. My history as it relates to getting into this fantastic rum business, this thing that, everybody ends up loving, whether you know it's in the cupcakes or not, the thing that makes me tolerable to listen to. It's a long sort of, not a contrived journey, but a difficult one on some levels. So I came to Hawaii in 2002. I went to the graduate school at the University of Hawaii, Manoa. I was pursuing a degree in quantum chemistry. So my PhD studies were in quantum chem, and I studied the smallest possible things that I could. I studied a 5 amino acid chain, valine, glycine, glycine, valine, glycine, and how it related to elastin, the protein that makes your skin retract and expand, and your heart and all those wonderful things. Maybe how it would relate to cosmetics eventually. And I was not gonna cuss, but I fucking hated it. It was the worst. So I've got all this time and energy, and I pumped all of myself into this very, very tiny thing, and then I quit. And before that, I was a college basketball player in Colorado. I poured my whole life into it, and then I fucking quit. And so my parents thought, we're screwed, what's this guy gonna do? And I did what every silly 22-year-old boy does. I got into hospitality because there was money and pretty people and easy hours, and I fell in love with the community there. I fell in love with my guests. I fell in love with my ownership. I fell in love with my colleagues. I fell in love with the ability to get an immediate response from someone that was positive or negative, which in the sciences, as you know, I still wouldn't have that. So I fell in love with all of these things and was able to begin my journey. So after realizing I was in love with hospitality and the art of taking care of somebody, I traveled as deep and as dark and as fast and hard as I could down that track. So what I did is I read everything I could, I talked to everybody I could, I found every human that gave a shit about it, and I tried to extract as much information from them as humanly possible. At some point, taking care of people. My last restaurant that I helped open was the Pig and the Lady. So as we were opening the Pig and the Lady, I already knew that Kohana Rum existed. I was going to eventually take on the job of their first employee once they were past a certain point. So I had been contacted a few years prior to that, and I was able to jump on board very, very early with Kohana Rum and really help to steer some of the ship that hopefully you guys see in some of your neighborhood bars. And that's where we are today. So with Kohana Rum, with the hospitality industry, and even with the graduate studies before that, I've had a lot of examples as to how to look at the community I'm within and look at where I'm at. So with the theme being invest today, I'm going to talk to you guys about investing as it pertains to your community and your profession and where that goes. On 2 different occasions, I've been able to ride the wave that was happening with or without me. And so I have some really interesting tidbits here and there. I was at the beginning of the cocktail renaissance as it pertains to Hawaii, before that was a thing, before you had Negronis in every bar. You had to beg for people to put their vermouth in their fridge, things like that. Before we had craft coffee, before we understood the different varietals of grapes in some of these wines, I was at the very sort of beginning of the modern version of Hawaii's cocktail scene. On the rum side, we are currently riding the craft spirits wave. So we're in this interesting moment where we've caught sort of the break of this wave and we're carrying through. So I'll talk a little bit about what it's like to be a part of building a community and then where it goes from there. But I need my notes, which I forgot. That sucks for you guys. You have to see me twice. Perfect. Check. Why the fuck should they listen to you? All right, let's talk about investing. Investing, as most of you guys probably look at it, relates to money, right? You invest in cryptocurrency, there we go. Or maybe you're a little bit more weird like me and you're all about Vanguard and you're letting somebody else do all the hard work for you and you check your Betterment account every 2 minutes and see how the market's doing, like you have anything to fucking do with it. But that's how most of us look at it, right? We look at it via dollars. But let's actually take a step back and realize what those dollars are. Those dollars are just a resource, right? They're something we have. Other resources, time, energy, talent. So we're going to define investment as expending resources with the expectations of returns greater than that put in. So the goal with an investment is growth, right? You don't put in your money to lose money. You don't put in your time for no reason at all. You don't add your talent so that things don't improve, right? So when we're going to talk about our community and the investment that we're going to put into it, the expectation is growth. I'm defining it as such because I'm going to speak in a lot of soft language about this. I don't really speak in soft language very often. I don't buy in blindly into altruism. I think there are moments for it, but I think there's a place to win. And I'm okay with people winning, and I'm okay with you guys going after every win you can get. I don't think everything needs to be done without yourself in mind. And frankly, I don't think it ever fucking happens, so we can talk about that later. So the first thing I want to talk about within the community guidelines is things like this. Taking your time, your energy, and realizing that there's a group of people who might want to chase after a similar goal. So as an example, in 2006, 2007, we started a small, not-for-profit chapter of the United States Bartenders Guild in Hawaii. Ben is chief amongst them. He's helping to lead the ship right now with a couple other talented humans. But in 2006, it was hard to find 10 humans that cared enough to start that had enough energy, that had enough time, and had enough give a shit to begin this thing. So what did we do? We beat the drum, we begged people, we asked people that maybe were on the fence about even being part of the community to jump in and add whatever energy they could. Some folks were union bartenders that had been there for 30 years and just wanted to know what it was about. Other guys were stalwarts and like true masters of the craft. I mean, this was Chandra Lucariello, who's probably the most important person in Hawaii beverage right now. You've got John Schwalbenitz, 30-year bartender at Murphy's. You've got Christian Self, owns Bevy, used to run 39 Hotel. You've got dipshits like me that were just like bar backing and bartending when they would give us the time. But all of us added our energy to that community. And what we did is we created a 10-person panel that just said, we're going to continue to talk and build and go wherever we can. And over the course of the last 13 years or so, we've gone from 10 people to 140, but our total touch has been over 500 during that time. So we've got 500 people. And in the beginning, when we set out for what this community's goals were gonna be, it was to let the public know that we existed. That was it. That's all we cared about, was the next time somebody opened a bar, that they understood there were people that gave a crap about running a bar the right way. So we presented ourselves in this sort of packaged simple way, and now you can't go to a neighborhood restaurant without getting some amount of a craft cocktail, which is a victory. So 15 years ago, would have never thought that that was actually possible, and then we watched it happen. So that investment of those 10 original humans really paid off in the long run. Now, if you were to ask your average bartender today whether or not the USBG mattered in that, whether or not, it matters right now, I think you would get a mixed bag of reactions. I don't care about that at all. I care about the fact that it happened. So for me, the measure of success had very little to do with the outside look, and instead defining that original vision and making sure we got there. If somebody else took us there, I'm fine with that. I don't care. We got there. So there's a lot to sort of unravel when you're building a community about defining that core goal, that place that you want to be going, and then investing your time towards that direction. Even if it's as simple as just, we want people to know craft cocktails exist in Hawaii, and it can happen. So that was one example of a community that we built a long, long time ago, and still continues to thrive today. It's something that I think investments like that can happen in any profession, period. Especially, I think, in some of the creative pockets, you guys are a little more siloed than you are collaborative. So there's some interesting stuff that can happen there. I understand the competition versus collaboration, but there are some areas that you guys can overlap and maybe band together. And speaking as somebody that rode a fairly significant creative wave, I think it's worth doing. The second place that I think you get immediate community is underemployment. So whether you're an entrepreneur, a creative that works for somebody, a manager, whatever it is, at your place of work, you automatically have a community. And that community has, hopefully, a set of goals. Those aren't the only goals you have to go after as employees. You're allowed to have your own dreams. You're allowed to have sets of dreams within different parts of the company that help you to get there. It all ought to be additive to your employer, but it doesn't have to be all of the time. Your moments on your breaks with your colleagues talking about interesting things are important. Your brainstorming sessions that lead to something that your company may never do is important. Ideas come from those moments. So take advantage of the people you have around you in that very, very tight and paid scenario. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about probably what I think is the most important thing you can do as far as community goes. And it is developing community by one-on-one interactions. So I look at professional development and improvement and investing in the whole in three major ways. I think there's the blind leadership master apprentice. I think there's the slightly less clear but more often used, which is boss employee. And then there's mentors and mentees. So I'm going to define these as three different things. That way we can talk about mentorship in a way that I think is clear. When you have a master-apprentice relationship, just look at those two words. You have somebody who's fucking in charge, and you're going to learn that thing from them, right? So you've got this person who's a master of their craft that understands what they're up to, and you're going to glean every bit of that. Whether it's Euro dreams of sushi or learning woodworking from somebody who graduated from RISD and has all this amazing understanding of furniture design, whatever it might be. Or if you're going to go work for Ben at Highbrow or whoever else that is the master of the craft in your area. You are just going to go, you're going to listen, you're going to observe, and you're going to repeat. And that's what that relationship is. And I think a lot of us look for that relationship without realizing that's what we're looking for. We're looking for somebody to take our hand and guide us the whole freaking way. This room may not be that way, but I think in general, that's the way people look at it. People ask me for advice. They don't necessarily want advice that they're going to go have to take actions on. They want me to say, this is step one, come back after you've completed step one and do step two. So that's one of these relationships you can have. And there's really nothing wrong with this. A lot gets done. There's a lot of amazing humans that have learned and improve our world day to day through this mechanism. Second one, employer-employee. And this can be a lot of different things. As I'm sure you guys all know, employee-employer relationships are incredibly complex. They can be master-apprentice. They can be, they don't even know you exist. I mean, there's a whole lot in between these things. But the key thing to understand with employer-employee relationships is you've got a single goal in mind, which is almost always about dollars. You have money to be made. So I caution you when you're looking for people to lead you, following only people within your own chain, only people within your own business, only people that are top to bottom within one company, because they're going to do what's best for the company as opposed to what's best for your and their relationship, if they're acting in the right way as an employer for their employee, which is just, that's the case. So when you look at how to go about finding humans to help you along your journey, they can be within your own place. Just remember that it may not always be in all of the best interests of you. You have to understand what parts they're going to be additive to and what they're not. And both master-apprentice and employer-employee relationships have boatloads of investments going both ways. There's resources being exchanged in both directions, so there's a reciprocal situation happening here, right? You're giving your time for money, or you're giving your time for experience and talent. So they're giving their time to bring you up and to hopefully rise along with your ship or allow themselves to maybe back off or do higher goal things. There's a lot of opportunities there, but there's an investment going both directions. Similarly, in what I think is the most underutilized professional development tool we have, especially in Hawaii, is proper mentorship. Investing in other people to bring the entire community along. If there's anything that I could get across today, it's invest in other people to bring the entire community along. You have to teach people, you have to pay attention, you have to listen, and you have to push. You need this for the whole pie to grow. Let's go back to investing in the beginning. The reason why our money makes more money is because the whole pie grows, not because we're beating somebody else. If you want the whole pie to grow as a creative, you need the community to grow. You can't do all of that yourself. You're not the whole pie. So to get more, you need to be able to grow that entire thing. So from the altruism aspect, there's a lot of fucking money to be made if you grow the whole pie. If you convince more people that everybody needs a cocktail bar, or that everybody needs an amazing designer, or that everybody needs, proper typeface, which is why you guys don't have a PowerPoint, because I didn't want you fucking judging me. Because that's not what I do. So let's talk about mentorship a little bit. And let's talk about what it means to mentor and to be a mentee. There's a lot of vulnerability in this, and I think it's why it doesn't happen very frequently in a long-term and established way. I think it's the reason why everybody sits with their boss and allows their boss to be their mentor, or sits with, the master-apprentice thing, because there's money being exchanged, so you don't have any guilt. And I don't think that's fair, because both people in the mentor-mentee relationship grow by, I believe, the same exact amount. So I think it's a beautiful way for people to grow without having everything circle around dollars. So when you think about mentor, mentee, you think about usually the very beginning example I give, which is apprenticeship. You think about a master of the craft passing off that information, right? That's generally what you think of. You go like, who's the best fucking person in my business? I'm gonna go ask that person if they'll mentor me. I'm gonna ask them smart questions. They're gonna give me great answers, and I'm gonna become more successful. And there's a possibility that that occurs. It's a really brilliant way to look at it. Look, surround yourself with smart people. That's the deal, right? Everything you do, whether it's mentor, mentee, or just day to day, if you surround yourself with smart people, you're going to be better. So if you go after the mastery of your craft and you say, and there can be multiple, right? And you can find the one that's the right fit for you. They're going to drag you along until you start to understand how they look at it, and then you're going to start working together and going in a direction. Now, there's a boatload of advice for how to be a great mentor and how to be a great mentee. I'm not here to tell you how to eventually do it. I want to convince you that you should go out there and establish both of those relationships. And that means looking, even if you are the master of your craft, looking for somebody who's a co-pilot of sorts, somebody else that's going through the same things as you, so you can both learn together as you go along. Or if you're somewhere on the spectrum in between the best of the best and the lowest on the totem pole, you go look for that person that's going to help you, that's above you in some capacity. Maybe you just want to learn one type of thing. Go find that person that's fucking great at it and ask them smart questions and see if they're willing to put in the time with you that you're going to give to them, and you're going to learn. Now the deal is, because you're along that spectrum, you should probably be looking for people to pass off information to yourself. This doesn't just work one way. You can't just think, shit, I don't know enough about the marketing world. I'm gonna go out there and glean as much information from these 3 people as I can. It whittles down to 1, and I end up learning a boatload, and then you never pass that information along. So I would argue that every single person should be both a mentor and a mentee. You should be giving and taking. So there's an investment on both sides of that. And I think that's super, super important for growing the entire community via an investment. So I look at mentorship in 4 quarters, basically. You've got 4 different types of mentorship that you can have. I just talked about the masters of the craft or the apprenticeship one. I mentioned briefly the idea of co-pilots. So let's say you're out there, you're in a position growing, a design company, or you're working in, digital media, whatever it may be, accounting, whatever that thing is. If you are finding everybody else is having the same types of issues as you, the same types, like you don't see that person that's one notch up that can help answer some of those questions, find that person that's going to ride or die with you. Find that person that's going to be looking at the same problems from a slightly different angle, and you're doubling the amount of opportunities you have to solve that problem. It's literally the highest rate of improvement you can get, right? It's your second lottery ticket. It's your best improvement. Like you literally get, it's the only time you get 100% on yourself. You add a third, you don't get that much. So add that second person as your co-pilot to help you answer those questions. So you've got the apprenticeship side, you've got the ability to have a co-pilot. And just as an anecdote, my biggest improvements on the bar and mixology side came with co-pilots. It came working alongside of Dave Power, who is working with me opening a space in Waikiki right now. He owned Feral Pig on Kauai, but way back in the day we were both at Town Restaurant. Back when Town was the only farm-to-table place here, I went in and saw that they had a Negroni on their menu, so I did what every young, stupid bartender does. I went in every single day and ordered it until I found out who put it on the menu. And then I met, my co-pilot for the next 5 years. As we grew in the Hawaii mixology scene, when he traveled to New York, I learned things. When I traveled to San Francisco, he learned things. When he went overseas, he brought back knowledge. When he read something dope, he shared it with me. When we made a contact, we shared those contacts together. So I had a co-pilot that was adding to the whole situation, and I would consider that the most valuable form of mentorship I've actually had, was those people that rode right alongside me. And I think a lot of folks don't realize that that's a form of mentorship, that you have that give and take, that you have, the same questions that get asked by a master of the craft to somebody below, you end up asking each other, even though you don't have an answer. And then you go find it together. And there's a really valuable space in investing in somebody else as you travel that line together. Dave and I never worked together again. We worked together for 1 year. I worked 1 day a week just so I could say I worked with Dave, and that was it. We never had the employee, employer, coworkers situation. We were colleagues, and we grew together through that. And I think that, for me, is super important. And for those of you that might be less likely to put yourself in a vulnerable position by going and asking, hey, awesome human, I do a ton, will you maybe meet with me once a week, talk story, help me learn some of what I can learn? Instead, you find somebody that you view similarly as yourself, and you guys go and attack something together. I think there's space for both, and I think you should fucking do both. But if you're not that type of person, if you're not willing to ask that question, then you're not going to get there. All right. Third idea about mentorship is sometimes you just need somebody who's going to rah-rah you. Sometimes you just need somebody in your corner to help break down a wall or make a connection or just let you know you're headed in the right direction. So there's an idea of somebody that's willing to just put you on, somebody that's gonna really stand up for you as a person in your professional community. And that's really all it has to be. This can be somebody that you check in with once a year, once every 6 months. It's just somebody that's got your back. Sometimes that's all we need. And it doesn't have to come from a personal relationship, anything like that. They just understand who you are. The most often cited examples of this are former employers or former colleagues, people that have jumped maybe up a step or they're in a slightly different version of what you're doing, but they're willing to invest in you and literally put their words out there saying, yo, this person has what you need to get this job done. It's them standing up for you. It's them advising other people to invest in you. So you've got apprenticeship style mentorship, you've got co-pilot style mentorship, you've got cheerleaders, and then you've got the fourth, which really is in all of the three above it, but it's that reciprocal mentee-mentor situation. It's the not knowing as the mentor that you are also the mentee, because you're always going to be learning something. Even if that something is just learning how to communicate with somebody younger than you, less experienced than you, less talented than you, heaven forbid. It's one of those places where you're able to just glean some of it. I think the typical example of this is older folks not understanding tech, so you have the ability to sort of bring them up, or like me not knowing how to use QuickBooks, that type of thing. Understanding that style of you're getting something back. So there's that reciprocal side. I cannot say it enough. I think mentorship is the most underutilized investment in Hawaii's current professional market. I don't think we guide nearly enough, and I think we have to do a better job. So if you're the type of person in here that wants to go out and grow the pie of whatever your community is, go and find people to invest your time, your energy, and your talents in. Look, I'm super fucking busy. All of you guys are super busy. We're all afflicted with the American disease of busy, right? You can find time if you care to find time. And you'll be amazed at how much energy it gives you and how much fulfillment it gives you to help other people along as they go. How much time do I have? Ruh-roh. All right. 3 is cool. I can get it done in 3. Nobody's falling asleep because of the rum and the cakes yet, so that's all right. Thank you guys, by the way, for bearing with me as I talk about something I really think we should improve upon. The second to last space I want to talk about, now that we've sort of defined mentorship, is going back to the overall community. So once you go back to this bigger whole, whatever that is for you, whether it's the design side of things, or maybe you're a realtor or a distiller or whatever it is, you've got this community of humans. On the periphery of this community are other communities. Having communication and understanding with those other communities is super important to invest in. So yeah, maybe you find the rabbit hole to go down and figure out the 17 different Negroni variations that you can do with this one new vermouth, and now you've got 275 in your repertoire. That's awesome. Go down that path. Tell me what's best. Go to the deepest, darkest place you can. Tell me every grape varietal, all of the things that are in it. Tell me all the botanicals. Tell me why it's the best, and coach me through it. Bring along the community. That's fine. But you also need to look at who's on the edges of it. Who are those people designing your menus? Who are those people managing your spaces? Who are those people building your spaces? And start to have intelligent conversations with those people on the periphery, on the edges of what you do. Because that's another really simple way to build that sphere of influence and to eventually increase your pie. Because now, if I'm smart enough to be reading a little bit about a bunch of things on the edges that I start to understand, I can then ask intelligent questions, get intelligent answers, and be led to where I want to end up going. So if I start investing in the periphery of my community, I'm able to then glean things off of that. Whether from a beverage standpoint, it's super easy. Like, I can just look around and talk about tea, talk about coffee, talk about wine, talk about all the other spirits, and that's just one portion of it. Then I can talk about the distillation world and all the different types of distillation, all the different places. Let's just talk, provenance. There's a lot of different areas that all of you guys can do this, and starting to begin to understand where those bubbles overlap and investing in those things is super important. And if you're going to start to take on leadership roles, it's necessary. You have to start understanding some of that, because you're not just going to hand over the keys to the car. The last thing I would say on this long minty mentor journey is all of this goes back to one key thing, and it's why you can't phrase it all in an altruistic view. All of this, at the end of the day, is an investment in yourself. Not like beginning of the year, new me, new year, like all of that stuff, but instead a moment of like, I'm improving either my personal standing, my company's standing, my community's standing by making these investments. So all of these things, while they might sound like you're putting out lots of energy, they actually are going to end up giving you multipliers worth back. They're going to open up so many different doors. So when you mentor or become a mentee, lead somebody, listen to somebody, all of these things allow you to be investing in yourself through investing in your community. So it all builds. It's all boom, 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 boom. Mentor somebody. That's it.